feel that everyone needs to explore sexually, what their needs and wants are. Sexuality is an essential part of who we are as human beings. And as such, our sexuality is something to embrace wholeheartedly, with confidence and with joy. The journey of full self-acceptance of our sexuality, however, it is all too often marred with fear, shame, antiquated ideas, or simply the lack of knowledge. We have that a lot, especially in where I'm from, America, and our culture. Yeah, a lot of people don't understand how to explore sexually, and a lot of shame and fear is based into the culture. So being able to explore and research on your own is a big deal. Part of sexual health includes connection to a sexual identity, feeling comfortable and confident in your own sexual orientation, gender identity, and sexuality overall. It includes having an awareness of your sexual boundaries, respecting others' sexual boundaries, and practicing in a safe and responsible way. That being said, exploring your sexuality is a significant part of overall sexual health. So reasons for the sexual exploration. You're going to better understand yourself. Exploring your sexuality is a crucial part of figuring out who you are as an individual. And figuring out who you are is a part of living a happy and fulfilling life. Living in accordance with your own feelings of chosen values, your desires and interests as a fundamental part of being emotionally healthy. By exploring your sexuality, you allow yourself the freedom to try new things, to be open to new ideas, and grow as a person. It allows you the opportunity to fully connect with your most authentic self and avoid pain of pretending to be something or someone you are not. Alice Walker had this quote of, "Sexuality is one of the ways that we become enlightened, and actually, because it leads us to self-knowledge. The more you know about yourself, the more you can share it with somebody else and show up for who you really are." Exploring your sexuality increases feelings of self-acceptance and builds greater acceptance of others. As you get to know more about your likes and dislikes and who and what you prefer to do in the bedroom, you come to appreciate that particular part of yourself by honoring your personal preferences, exploring what interests you, and learning how to identify and respect your own sexual boundaries, and of course, those of others. You make room for who you are and who you want to be. With greater acceptance of self comes greater acceptance of others. Sexploration allows you to challenge learned inhibitions with a trusted and safe partner or by yourself, and reduce feelings of shame you have internalized from others or from the culture. Sexploration is about freedom and self-expression, ownership of one's sexual anatomy, and embracing self and others. Exploring also increases your self-confidence. Exploring your own sexuality can make you a much more confident person, both in terms of sexuality as well as in general. With sexuality, playing is such a big part of who we are, being comfortable with ourselves and sexually boosts self-esteem. It reduces reduces stress, depression, and anxiety. Is sex a biological need? No, you're not going to die from not having sex. But the biologically driven libido, aka your sex drive, one's enthusiasm and interest for sexual contact and intimacy, does serve a purpose beyond the continuation of the species. While human beings don't require sex to survive or even thrive, we do have a psychological need for connection. Sexual intimacy is one of the ways of meeting that human need for connection, which in turn reduces the stress, depression, and anxiety. Understanding sex and sexuality as a means of human connection may help eliminate any stigma attached to the concept and address repressive attitudes. Sexual repression occurs when a person prevents themselves from feeling or experiencing natural sexual urges and desires. A sexually repressed person usually holds negative beliefs about sex and that they may have learned from family, friends, religious institutions, culture, believing that the act of sex or everything about sex is dirty or wrong. But suppressing thoughts and feelings related to intimacy and sexploration doesn't just impact your experience between the sheets. When you deny yourself the opportunity to explore your sexual nature, you deny that very important and vital part of yourself. You're less likely to connect authentically or with another during intimate moments if you feel uptight, awkward, guilty, or uncomfortable. That lack of connection to others increases the feelings of isolation, stress, depression, and insecurity. Last but not least, your sexuality gives directions and increases satisfaction. It can help you find your true path in life as you learn more about yourself, others, and the opportunities for sexual connection. Being open to new, safe, or at least as safe as you can make it, experiences may lead you to an unexpected life direction. Exploring your sexuality and learning more about your sexual preferences enhances your sexual pleasure and makes for more of a fulfilling and satisfying experience. Feeling more confident sexually will likely have a positive effect on your partner or partners as well. All right, so the whole reasons we've covered. Now, what are ways to explore alone? You can do pleasurable research, explore your own universe, meet new people, and we're going to forget about labels while you're doing this exploration in this journey, because they may hold you back and they're going to change. The more you explore, the more these labels, they might not mean so much, or they change over time. So pleasurable research. Ethical porn, you can watch from different genres. I can talk today, I promise. You can search from different genres that are available on very many different porn sites. It's the whole Rule 34. If you can think it, it's out there on the internet. One that might be overlooked a lot is animated pornography, or hentai if it's from Japan. It can explore different ideas ethically because they are animated characters versus actually having live actors perform on screen. Reading or listening to erotica, human sexuality class, pole erotic, belly dancing class. I'm going to go through all of these as well through different slides. Reading different books or blogs on sexuality, watching videos on sexuality, and listening to different podcasts that deal with sexuality or erotica. So reading erotica. Individuals who have a more femme-presenting mind tend to get more stimulated with reading erotica or listening to erotica. Some things that might not be just, flat out, erotica on every page. Harlequin romance novels. The Marketplace series is actually more of a power exchange, like lifestyle 24/7 type of erotica. Fantasy romance, such as the Anita Blake by Laurel K. Hamilton, or the Court of Thorn and Roses series by Sarah J. Maas. Both have erotic scenes in them that are pretty steamy. I've read both of these, and they're really good. I've also read The Marketplace, which is also I highly recommend. Other services that have erotic literature that might be fan-based, or it's not like quote unquote published in a book or an anthology. Different services are like Literotica, Bellisa, Nifty, Novel Trove, Lush Stories, Adult Fan Fiction, CHYOA, Solo Touch, Kinkly, and Dream Me. If you do like more of the fantasy sci-fi type erotica, I would recommend Dream Me, because a lot of it has to do with like mythological types of encounters. Autoerotica. This has become really big in the past like 10 years, again, especially for femme-oriented Headspace. Again, Literotica has the autoerotica Dipsy. Quinn, Audible has plenty of erotica. Scribed, Auto Desires, Vibes, Reddit, Mjoy, Rosie, the Bellisa Erotic Podcast, and Jane, and Frolic Me are all places to find these. You can also find more actor directed towards the listener in these. Also, like on any of your porn sites will have those as well. They may have video, but you can put the video away and just listen to the audio, and that works as well. And what these do, reading and listening, as well as some of the others, they're going to help you kind of figure out what your desired template is, if it turns you on or if it doesn't, if you like a certain voice or you like a certain speech pattern or the way someone writes this, or your brain, because guess what? The largest sex organ is your brain. There have been studies that show people who have gotten into scans that they can have their own orgasms through their brain. They're not touching any parts of their body, not moving any muscles as far as like manually. It's all involuntary contractions because they're thinking about sex. Human sexuality classes. So these are more of educating yourself about sex and sexuality. Loveology University has a huge category or a huge catalog of different things about sex, learning about sexual education, as well as how to please your partner, more about masturbation. So the more you know about your body and maybe the body parts of others, at least like where they're located and things like that, the better you are armed. I don't want to say armed, but informed to help or, enhance pleasure for yourself and others. You can audit a local college. Most places will let you sit in on a class. I would read up on the college that you decide to audit, to what their proclivities are as far as their courses. If they're more secular in nature, it's probably more research-based. Whereas if you go to more of a religion-based college, they're going to put in their own doctrine in that. So just be aware of that if you decide to audit those. YouTube, look for reputable YouTubers that have done research. Dr. Doe, she's a clinical sexologist. She has a YouTube channel, very informed. There's plenty of others. I just didn't put them on the thing today. But if they have a reputable following and they've actually put the research that they do on their channel, you're good to go. There's also documentaries on sexuality. There's a ton more than what I put on here. These are just the ones that I looked or have watched and I find interesting. The Pleasure, or the Principles of Pleasure, is one of the newer ones that I've seen. It is on Netflix. It's about a 3 to 4 part miniseries on the current research for sex and sexuality. It talks about the updated sex drive. It's actually more of a dual mode for sexual desire and acting on it, where you have the brakes and the accelerator. There's no I in threesome, so that's more about having group sex, or it also addresses polyamory and consensual non-monogamy. Life Without Sex is a very short, like mini documentary on asexuality. A Slut Ever, it's on Viceland. It has, let me see if I can find that. The sex writer, Carly, I'm going to mess up this last name, Scarento, explores everything from virtual reality porn, which is really good, by the way, to sugar daddies in this particular series. It's really informative, and I liked it when I watched it. Skin is a history of nudity in movies. The Last Taboo explores what sexuality looks like for people with disabilities. And it's part of a group that's sometimes left out of the sexual conversation, is differently abled bodies. And it's really important because we are all sexual beings, no matter what kind of movement capabilities we have or we don't have, we can all be sexual. and podcasts. So these are more informative. American Sex with Sunny Megatron. She also did, I believe, a Showtime series on, sex. She talks all things sex, honestly. Kink and BDSM are some of her main areas of interest. She has a whole series on teaching about power exchange lifestyle. The Turn On, The Sexually Liberated Woman, Dying for Sex. Some of these are really interesting, like the Dying for Sex. The host talks with her terminally ill friend, discussing, sex, dates, and feelings of trying to be alive while being terminally ill. I thought that was really different to explore. Sex with Strangers, Sex Out Loud with Tristan Taormino, Dear Jesse Emian, Inner Hoe Uprising, Men's Sex and Pleasure with Cam Frazier, and Bad Examples. These are all they're informative and they have different points of view, whereas like Men's Sex and Pleasure with Cam Frazier is about more mask presenting and mask, brainwise individuals looking at sex and sexuality, whereas Bad Examples is more coming from a point of view of women. And the two individuals that host Bad Examples, they were on reality TV shows, and they talk a lot about what it's like to have, dating and the modern thing for women. And it's a really funny podcast. I enjoy it. You can also look at sexual and romantic movies and shows to see what might feel good to you or may turn you on or may get those, wheels greasing on what you may like with positions for sex. And you're going to see all kinds of genres in here. I have sci-fi, I have fantasy, I have drama, I have comedy. Outlander is more of a sci-fi time travel and period piece. Lots of steamy scenes in there. Bridgerton is a newer one. It's a period piece, also very steamy. We can even have a throwback for some of the ones like Friends, very sitcom-y, but it deals a lot with romance and what it's like to connect in that manner. Better Than Chocolate is a queer movie about two lesbians that are meeting and how they navigate flirting and finding out about their own sexuality towards each other. Queer as Folk, The L Word. They even have a L Word, The Next Generation, which is also very good. The Vampire Diaries, that's more of that fantasy. Sex in the City, Schitt's Creek, and Bonding. Bonding is a comedy about power exchange lifestyle and what it's like to be in that. So with these different shows, it gives you that capability of having a snapshot of what it may look like, but understand that these are romanticized and dramatized situations. So they're not always going to look like what they're presenting, but it helps fuel the imagination. Be like, oh, that looks really cool. I may want to try that. So if it's a fantasy in your mind that you're putting yourself in as a scenario, or if you have a partner and you want to have that conversation, we'll talk about that later on in the workshop. So it's just different things to give your mind some fuel for that. So now we're at exploring your own universe, which, you have sensual, erotic, tantric meditation, exploring your own body with outer course, masturbation with and without toys, things like sex furniture, different positions, and how to talk dirty to yourself can all help with the exploration. So going off with the sensual meditation. This also includes erotic meditation, tantric. It deals with mindfulness and staying present with yourself in these types of situations. If self-exploration is new, you can treat it like a new relationship with another person. Be curious and give it time. You don't have to necessarily focus on major erogenous zones. Touch different parts of your body. And we're going to get into that too, about the different erogenous zones. Also, we're going to get into masturbation, So the first step, even for sensual meditation and any of these things that I'm going to talk about in a minute, is to create an environment that's safe, comfortable, and relaxing. You need to set yourself up for relaxation and be sure that you're giving yourself enough time to explore. So while quickies are a thing, and they do happen, if you're new to this and you're just starting to explore, you need to give yourself some time. So set aside like an hour, hour and a half, and get yourself in the mood. Make the environment your own. You can dim the lights. You can put on different color lights, the music that you enjoy, or no music. It's up to you. You can put on a scented candle. So you're kind of romancing yourself when you're doing this. And be sure that you're engaging as many of your senses as possible and really allowing yourself to focus on you, nothing else, on you and your body. And think about, while I'm talking about this, think about what environments you like the most that could help facilitate that. And this really does help with the sensual and erotic and tantric meditations. Mindfulness is sex's best friend. If you're in the moment and you're there and focused on it, it's really good. You bring your, even if it wanders, because it's going to happen, you may have the monkey brain, or if you're neurodivergent, sometimes your brain will be like, oh, what about that? You can, okay, well, we'll have time for that later. Let's bring it back. And these abilities, yes, they're learned, so they're practiced, are the key to tapping into sexual pleasure and orgasm, just being able to be present. Taking time to know and understand your own sexual story as you practice self-acceptance without judgment whatsoever. So if you have particular fantasies that you're going to, or you want to touch certain parts of your body, and, insertion, things like that, there's no judgment. If you want to do it, try it. Slow down. You don't have to rush, because this is why we give ourselves time, right? Hour, hour and a half, maybe more, depending upon how long you want to be exploring this. And make it for yourself. This is self-care. This is self-love. There aren't any specific rules to how you do this, by the way, to perform like tantric masturbation, because there's no set formula for sexual pleasure at all. What works for you might not work for somebody else, and that's perfectly normal. It's also important to remember that tantric or sensual meditation is less about achieving a destination, so less about having the big O, because that will happen. It's more about exploring the different sensations in your body. In a 2001 study, it suggests that mindfulness is positively associated with sexual satisfaction, desire, and functioning. So when you have this practice of sexual health and mindfulness, some things do improve, such as erectile dysfunction, hypersexuality, sexual distress, as well as premature ejaculation. Those all can be lowered and lessened with this practice. Oh, by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, and I'm happy to answer them as I go, or you can save them for the end of the presentation. I forgot to mention that at the beginning. So exploring outer course. And what I mean by outer course is you're just touching your body. You're not inserting anything. It's more of what feels good. So, you touch your earlobe, your scalp, the back of your arm, your neck, your thigh, things like that. One place that I find really enjoyable is that space right between where your hip is, where that crease is for your leg and your hip. To me, that's a really good zone. At least for me, I enjoy the feel of it either on myself or on somebody else. And if you're looking at these particular diagrams, I tried to make most of the presentation as gender neutral as possible. Unfortunately, most of our research is on cis het individuals. So the one that you see on the left is comparing femme and masc individuals. Even though pretty much our erogenous zones are the same, there's not a big difference, honestly, because every individual is different. And the one on the right is more of a neutral. So you can see it's very similar, like scalp, ears, neck, nipples for some. For some, nipples are a no-go. Lower back, belly button, back of the knee, which is really interesting. I didn't think the back of the knee would be one when I started studying sexuality, but it is. Inner thighs, feet for some are really good. Feet for others, not so much. So this is exploring what it is for you and what that means. That's what the outer course is for, touching and enjoying that type of sensation. And an activity that you may want to do is you can get or draw a neutral body, and you can use colors like hot and cold. Like, these are really good, these are not so good. So it's more of you getting to know this activity for yourself. And if you feel like you want to share that with somebody, you can say, hey, here's a map of my sexual zones that I did for myself. This could help them know where to touch. Like, this is yay, a-okay, this is eh, and this is a eh, nope. That's a whole no, we're not going to do that. And what most people think about when we do sexploration is masturbation, because it is very important for you to understand the inner workings of your sexuality as well. And if you do discover you are asexual, some asexuals do masturbate. It helps with stress levels, again, with anxiety, things like that. So it does have a place in all sexploration. And different things that do help with masturbation. We have vibrators, we have dildos, we have anal toys, we have strokers. I mentioned earlier, like sex furniture, different positions while you are masturbating. More advanced things like sex machines can help aid that as well. So if we're looking at, let's say, vibrators, they come in a variety, sizes, settings. They can come in sets. They can be used on all parts of the body. One way to test vibrators is you can feel it on the tip of your finger first, but also the tip of your nose, because the tip of your nose is very sensitive. It's going to be very similar to the nerve endings that is in the clitoris or the penile head. So it'll be like, oh, okay, that feels good, or whoa, that's too much. So you can understand, like, this may be a good one or this won't. And that's a good activity to do in a sex shop. They will have people who are there that can help you out. So you're able to experience that for yourself. It gets a little trickier when you're shopping online because you don't know the power of some motors with vibrators or how they're going to feel, what kind of material they're made out of. And be very careful when you're buying sex toys online, especially from shops that have discounted prices that may get direct from places like China, because they don't really have a whole lot of manufacturing guidelines of what goes in that specific silicone. So you could be absorbing chemicals that you don't want to absorb. So places like the US, the UK, Germany, places that do have standards of making sex toys are much better. So you know that this is going to be safe to put in your body or on your body. Dildos, all shapes and kinds of dildos, non-vibrating and non-powered toys. It can offer the feeling of fullness and penetration, and these come in all shapes and sizes, anywhere from like little bitty ones to really big ones, really thick ones, or really thin ones. They allow you to be able to either have that experience of fullness or know what your limits are when you're exploring. Maybe, oh, that's too big, or that's too small. Also works anally as well, not just vaginally. You can also use them orally if that's what's tickling yourself right now. They also have suction cups that they can be put on walls or boards or stabilizers. This is where sex furniture can come in, with places like Liberator and some other sex furniture companies. They make furniture where you can put a dildo in and be able to experience those different positions of self-pleasure. Anal toys, so anal beads, butt plugs, pegging, things like that. Those are available. Again, you need to look at the type of material. to see if it works for you. Some can be glass, metal, silicone, what have you. As one of my friends says, everything is insertable as long as you have a condom on it. But be careful with that. If you're doing anal play, make sure it has a flared base. And the reason why you want a flared base is so it doesn't go up into your anal cavity. That's why some disclaimers like Pure Romance will say, do not put the egg bullets insert anally, because people will try to fish them out with the wires that they're attached to, and they strip the wires, and guess what is left in the anal cavity? The bullet is now lodged up in there. And yeah, then you need to go to the emergency room. And that's where Sex Sent Me to the ER has become so popular. So again, flared base, because the anal cavity can be greedy. Strokers. So for individuals who have a penis, strokers can be really effective. So the fleshlight, they have the egg as well too. These can help simulate what it feels like to be put into an anus or a vagina or a mouth, or inserted in other places. You can even have pervertibles. I have seen people use sleeping bags. I have seen people, I used to be a jailer, so inmates would make certain things called a fifi. And a fifi is a simulated anus or vagina or mouth, where they would take gloves, tie the fingers together, fill it up with warm water, and use whatever kind of lubricant they have around. Or they would use toilet paper tubes. All kinds of pervertibles are around. Just make sure that it's washed and it's safe. I've had people use fruit before. Make sure you're putting a condom on it, because for one, pesticides, make sure it's washed. And also like banana peels don't work so well in certain cavities. They tend to have a chemical reaction. So if you're wanting to use things like foods, I would put a barrier on them. And also with your sexual toys, you can also put a barrier on them as well, especially if you are planning on maybe sharing them with somebody in the future. That way it's that barrier. And make sure you clean them afterwards. Soap and water work really well, like warm water, or they do make specialized sprays when they do that. Also lubricants. There are several different types of lubricants. Big thing, spit is not lube. Can it help enhance things? Yes, but it's not lube. You have water-based lube, you have silicone-based lube, and you can have hybrid-based lube. Water-based lube, that is going to soak up pretty quickly, and because it doesn't leave that barrier that a silicone base would leave, as well as the hybrid. They also leave that kind of slick base, so you don't have to use quite as much. If you are going to practice anal masturbation, when you think you have enough lube, you probably don't. I recommend silicone-based lube for anal play, because it does stay slippery longer. And that helps with knowing, okay, this works. I don't advise using any of the numbers for anal play, because pain is something that tells us, hey, this is hurting. This isn't, it could be not good unless you're into that. But it also lets you know, hey, something is ripping or tearing. So we need to go slower, or we need to stop. With that, listen to your body, please. If it's saying, hey, we may need to slow down there, turbo. It's okay. Like I said before, sex furniture. Liberator does make wedges. They also make this dome shape that can help if you're trying to simulate being on top. There's also, I wish I had a picture of this on here, but I don't. It is a frame that can go over somebody, or can have that particular piece of furniture go underneath it. And there is a very thick elastic bands that go across it. So it allows a dildo or a penis or any phallic shaped object to be up there. And so then you can use it as far as like bouncing up and down. So it helps with knees. It helps with individuals who may not have that much mobility. They also have handles So it's almost like riding a rocking horse a little bit. That can help with that particular, issue as well. And it's fun to try. And the wedges can help as well if you're looking for a certain kind of sensation for self-pleasure. You can use them too with other people, and we'll get to that later. Are there any questions so far on different things to use or different types of toys that you may want to use on yourself? And nipple clamps, I didn't go over that. Those can be very fun, so you can know what type of tension that you have, because there are nerve endings that are attached to your nipples that go down to your uterus. If you are a uterus owner, that can have that contraction. Individuals who have a penis have a similar contraction with that, even though the penis owners don't have a uterus, but still there is that type of nerve ending connection that can help with orgasms as well. Talking dirty to yourself. That is a kind of a concept. Like if you're not used to talking dirty or talking erotically, it can help you play out scenarios in your own head. Or earlier when I was talking about the erotic audio, from the actor's perspective to the listener, you can be answering them back. So you're having this whole play in your head, almost like a mind fuck. And don't be afraid if you get the big O, give yourself a high five, man. Because, yeah, you worked yourself good, and that's awesome. Also, with dirty talk, it normalizes the behavior. It normalizes the word choice. If we're using words such as like, fuck, pussy, dick, cock, all of these things become normalized, so we're not afraid to say those words to not only to ourselves, but to future sexual partners that we may be having. It can enhance the fantasy for yourself and be like, oh yeah, I'm really in this headspace. So more of staying present. So it helps with the mindfulness as well. And also, once we're done with the whole figuring out our, with masturbation and doing the research, it might be time to start meeting people to try some of these things out. So you have dating apps, you have websites, you have clubs. You can consider like popping into the apps and changing preferences. If you're interested in the variety of the gender spectrum, check it out. Date throughout the spectrum if you're interested in that. And that doesn't mean that once you meet them, you have to have sex on the first date. You don't have to. You can go as fast or as slow as you want or the other person wants. And you can get drinks, you can hang out. Sometimes that can be intimidating, but we're going to take the pressure of like the sex encounter off unless you really want to, and just getting to know that person, especially if you're exploring your own sexual identity. Maybe you're wanting to try, seeing someone of the same sex, or someone who is androgynous, or someone who is into something else. Just getting to know them and getting to know what preferences and boundaries they have and what they're looking for as well. I usually treat a first date as an interview to see what they're like, and so they get to know me. And I usually take the pressure of sex off the table for the first date. That's usually what I recommend, but I've also done it the opposite way, where it's, hey, I like you, you like me, let's talk about boundaries, let's talk about hard limits and soft limits, and see where we go from there. And if dating apps aren't your thing, you can look at doing organic meetups with going to a club or a bar that's in town. There are spaces that are specifically designed for individuals who are part of the LGBTQ community or are interested in the LGBTQ community. There are power exchange munches, there's swinger meetups, there's single clubs. You just have to do the looking for them. And it depends on the area that you're in. There are opportunities all around. You just got to hunt for them. Express interest in others around you and try out different approaches and see what feels right. Set limits in advance so you don't go too far and too fast. And there are always new opportunities to be played with, or maybe the person that you're talking to may come up with something that you never thought of. So it's interesting just to sit there and kind of mull that over. And last but not least, with exploring with yourself, don't worry about labels right now. Just, they're there. From experience, coming to terms with sexuality is a whole journey. And you're gonna be talking back and forth with yourself. And guess what? That's normal too, to talk to yourself. And there are times where you're gonna doubt yourself. You're gonna doubt how you're feeling. And that can lead to you invalidating your very own identity. Before exploring your sexuality, it's important to know what you want and desire relating your sexuality is valid. And that's part of doing the research and being able to have that time with yourself. You deserve to explore anything that you're wanting to explore, regardless if you label yourself or not. There are people who are like, I don't like labels, and that's fine. So what I have said before is labels help us understand sometimes ourselves, or we're better able to explain things to other people, but they don't necessarily define who we are as individuals. Like I said earlier, if you're curious on the gender spectrum, then lean into it. And there's no need to label and to say, hey, I have this flag or I have that flag. It's up to you. Take some time to read about the different sexualities, though. Things like demisexuality, which is you have to have like an emotional connection. A sapiosexual, you're really attracted to individuals who are intelligent and are able to express that. There's a whole list of them that would take me almost a whole class to explain the different sexualities and the different labels that people can put themselves in, or be able to say, hey, this is what I am, to explain it to somebody else. So there's tons of literature out there about it, and podcasts and whatnot. Exploring your sexuality, whether you're in college or you're middle-aged, or even if you're older, is totally valid, because you deserve to be able to be happy with yourself and your sexuality and explore those things and have fun and play, because sexual play is play for adults. One thing that I didn't mention earlier, which has come to light, certain video games can help you explore sexuality as well. Not just like the new one that has come out, Baldur's Gate 3, that has different types of sexualities and encounters you can experience, but also when you have dating simulators that have come out that are really big over in Japan and other places overseas, and have started to make a bigger name for themselves in America, and I believe the UK as well. Helps you with can see, oh, well, I may be curious about that, so let's play here. Or let's try to let's try to explore this person who might have a more goth presentation, or how about this person that has a more power exchange interest? And that way it's in a safe container, such as a video game, where you're having that simulated encounter with somebody else. So those can also be very helpful, like I mentioned with virtual reality porn or sex, where you're having a point of view from the person who is, having the sexual acts done to them. It can be very erotic and very arousing, and be like, oh, I like this, or oh, I don't like this. That can help as well when you're exploring for yourself. So ways to explore with a partner or partners. As stated in the beginning of the presentation, the concept of sexploration stems from the original, in 2019. The concept of sexploration stems from the connection between attachment theory and sexuality, and includes the notion that a supportive romantic relationship might serve as a secure base for sexual exploration. The idea of a romantic partner or partners, if I slip up and say partner, it's because they did the whole monogamous couple versus having a polyamorous or a consensual non-monogamous relationship style. So the idea of having a romantic partner or partners serving as a secure platform from which to explore sexually or otherwise is rooted in attachment theory, which conceptualize attachment as secure, low in, and what they mean by secure is means you're low in feelings of anxiety and low in avoidance of intimacy. So you're actually turning towards your partner or partners, you're opening up and you're being vulnerable, and you don't have that insecurity of they're going to leave me, or I'm going to be abandoned, or I'm not good enough. Or as insecure, which is the inverse, you have high anxiety or avoidance or both. And if you're more curious about attachment styles, there's a book called Attached. There are also attachment assessments that you can take, which will let you know if you're more anxious attached, avoidant attached, disorganized attachment, or secure. And you can be a combination thereof as well. Like you may identify with certain aspects of each one, but usually we have one that we identify with more. And you can change your attachment style with therapy, with working on yourself and your self-confidence, things like that, to be more secure. And none of these particular attachment styles are wrong. It's just what has been researched and how they present themselves in relationships. So according to like existing psychological literature, it strongly supports that a theoretically based link between attachment and sexual systems. For example, individuals who are in a secure relationship use sex to bond with their partners, to express their positive feelings or for one another, or to satisfy both their own and their partner's emotional and sexual needs. However, anxiously attached or avoidantly attached individuals are more likely to use sex to fulfill their own needs, such as using sex to prevent losing a partner, or engaging only in casual sex in order to avoid emotional connections. Now, there is the asexuality part in this, where they will use individuals who are asexual. They may have sex with their partners, they may not, but they also use different forms of intimacy to connect with their partner, because there are at least 11 or more different types of intimacy. We're just focusing on sexual intimacy in this particular course. So a study conducted by Dr. Ava Cadell, she's the founder of Loveology University and Loveology. She's used the Loveology Sexual Compatibility Survey, which gathered data from over 1,000 participants found in popular fantasies, such as sexual massage, oral sex, threesomes, outdoor sex, sex with strangers, domination and submissive play, so power exchange, exhibition, voyeurism, sex tapes, the list goes on. In short, she had about 1 million different fantasies existed, and anything safe or consensual was a-okay to explore. I'm going to go over some of the more popular ones that were in that study for ways to explore with your partner. So the first thing we're gonna talk about is actually talking with your partner, having those conversations, because that is super important. So first, again, the talk. And I would suggest talking outside of the bedroom for this, so we're not having pillow talk, even though pillow talk is nice. And what I mean by pillow talk is kind of like that glow after you have sex or you have intercourse or coitus, whatever term we want to use, and just saying, hey, that would be nice, or I really enjoy this, which is also valuable. But if we're looking to explore more, or you might feel a little uncomfortable, let's do it outside of the bedroom. So with that, I want you to feel curious or be curious about your partner or partners, and try to have an attitude of non-judgment. So if you've been dating a partner or a lover for a short time, you may want to communicate like your kinks. This is especially helpful with newer relationships, as it relieves pressure from both of you to get into sex right away after it's brought up. This way you both have a safe ground to explore each other's reactions to the conversation and see how it flows. And based on that, you can decide if you want to go there with that person, or you can decide if it's within your own comfort zone or not within their comfort zone. I would suggest having a calm, quiet setting for the conversation, private, because some people do feel uncomfortable talking about sex in a public place. Timing is super important. It's important to make sure that it's a good time for you to talk and for your partner or partners to talk. Make sure that both of you have time to discuss your interests and that you don't feel rushed to talk too quickly. Ask your partner if they're open to you sharing a few things that you have been thinking about. If they say yes, then take a deep breath and start with I statements. And share what your fantasy or fantasies are. Be sure to ask your partner or partners what their fantasies are as well. This is about being curious about each other's worlds. And you may be surprised of how similar your fantasies are, or they may be different. And you might be interested in what they're talking about. So I recommend a certain chapter in the 8 Dates book by John and Julie Gottman. It's 8 dates, conversations to make a relationship last. Within the sex date that they have, or it's like sexual play, they have a whole chapter of like a scenario of people that they've worked with. And then at the end, they have the date that they qualify it as, with a list of questions that you need to read over and answer for yourself. And then when you're having the date, you talk about it with your partner or partners and getting to know that sexual template. It's love mapping, getting to know that world for each other. Discussing fantasies, try to be encouraging and non-judgmental. This will increase the environment of safety. So when we're having these particularly, I don't want to say stressful, but harder conversations or being vulnerable with somebody, you want to be able to feel safe with them. And that means you're creating this environment of you're not judging what they're saying. You're open to listening, and maybe you're doing some active listening skills. So what I'm hearing you saying is XYZ. And of course, the person is going to say, yes, that's what I mean, or no, that's not what I'm saying at all. And again, it's back and forth. You want to share yours as well as you want to hear what they're going to share. And I would say error on the side of over communicating, so being specific versus sharing too little. It's better for everyone to be on the same page than for someone to get hurt or to feel violated. Describe what you'd like to explore in detail, as much detail as you can come up with at the time. And everyone's kinks have their own parameters, kinks or fantasies, things like that, that are specific to that person. Address expectations. What are you looking to get out of this encounter? For example, if you're into hair pulling, or your partner or partners are into hair pulling, describe. You can even demonstrate it on the partner with consent, of course. Like, hey, this is about how I like it to be tugged, or grabbing the ponytail, or maybe both, whatever that looks like. Being able to say, okay, yes, or they can do it at that time. Like, just, you're not in the moment, but yes, that's what I like. So when you are in that moment, it's not, whoa, no, stop, time out. We need to readjust. So you're not getting out of that headspace. And the more direction you give, the better they can give you what you want, and it'll be safer. Okay, one of the bigger ones that people have discussed having is group sex or threesomes. So if you're, threesomes are a really common fantasy in their own right, but they're also meant to be living out several other more specific fantasies. Perhaps you've always wanted to watch your partner have sex with somebody else, or you wanted them to watch you to have sex or intercourse with somebody else. Maybe you want to experience having 2 or more partners at the same time, or having the sexual experience with whatever person in the gender spectrum you would like. Whatever your motivations are, it's a great way to explore sexuality and fun. And make sure you're asking the other parties that are joining you all the same things you asked your partner, because you're inviting somebody else into the bedroom and they are an equal participant. Find out what their boundaries are, hard limits, soft limits, what they prefer, what they don't prefer. The more people you add, the more type of preferences and boundaries there may be, so that everybody is on the same page. It's almost like if you're wanting to do a big orgy, you're going to have almost like a congress with people. Like, hey, what are your likes? What are your dislikes? What are your like, well, no, we don't do that. And also, even when you're in group sex situations, it's okay to stop and say, okay, nope, that's not working for me. Let's try this. And if you're the one that they're trying to correct, don't feel slighted or judged. They're letting you know what their boundaries are and what needs to be switched. Sometimes we can get hurt feelings when someone is stopping us in the middle and be like, oh, well, I thought I was doing it right, and now I just feel bad. Try not to take it personally, because they're trying to share with you how to have a pleasurable experience. Making sure I didn't miss anything. So if you have boundaries and or rules, so here's the difference between boundaries and rules. Boundaries are things that we use for ourselves, for us to feel safe. Rules are something that we provide on somebody else. So if you are in a monogamous relationship and you're inviting somebody else in for sexual play, you need to let them know the rules in your relationship. If there's no kissing or no penetration, they need to know that stuff up front. Same thing for anybody else that's coming into the bedroom. What are your boundaries and what are your rules? Because those are two different things. So if, let's just say, because I didn't address this in the individual, like doing this alone and meeting people, if you're single, it's still vital that everyone involved feels safe and respected throughout the encounter. So make sure you are clearly communicating those boundaries and rules. It's also important that any participant has the right to call quits, because consent is sexy and it can be withdrawn at any time. It needs to be enthusiastic. I know I have another webinar that I did, I think a couple of years ago, that goes all through consent, the fries of consent. So it's freely given, it's reversible, it's informed, it's specific, and it's enthusiastic. If you don't have a yes, then it's a no-go. There's no non-committals. A non-committal is like, maybe, kinda, I guess so. No, it needs to be a yes or a no. If it's not a yes, then it's going to be a no. We don't do it. It can be helpful to reiterate that everyone is safe and on the same page. If you're looking to have extra guidance, you can turn to some educational materials like we were talking about doing the sexy research earlier. There's a book called The Threesomes Handbook. It's a guide to experiencing your first threesome to have safe and joyful group sex. Next thing that is really popular to explore in relationships is a power exchange play, or BDSM, bondage, discipline, sadomasochism. And exploring power dynamics with domination and submission play you can enter a whole new world, like the whole magic carpet ride with Aladdin and Jasmine. Yeah, a whole new world. Yeah, totally different. So encouraging the exploration of BDSM. People are eager to discover new roles for themselves, and power exchange is a sexy and safe way. Big thing that I discussed earlier with the group sex is knowing your boundaries and rules, limits, things like that. That goes the exact same, if not more, when you start engaging into power exchange play. Because the person who is maybe dominating needs to know what the submission's limits are or the sub's limits are. Same thing for the person who is submitting. Maybe your top dominant master, whatever, they're not going to be able to give you what you're looking for, because there are different subtypes within the power exchange community. So you both need to be open about what you're looking to get and what you can give. Also, safe word or safe gesture if you're going to start in this type of play. Safe word or safe gesture is usually something that you're not going to say in general speech, such as even pineapple support. It's named after the third most popular safe word. pineapple. The first one being red. Usually we're doing like the whole stoplight system with green, yellow, red being no, we do a complete stop and we see what's going on and we talk about it. Yellow is like, okay, turbo, I need you to slow down a little bit. This is approaching the part where I'm not going to be able to do this. And green is like, yes, go. So when I talk about gestures, some things that happen in power exchange can be bondage. So let's say, like the more extreme is, hey, you're in a vacuum bed. This is where you get put into a bed and you'll have a tube where you can breathe, but you're not going to be able to move. So some people will stick their tongue out to wiggle for a safe gesture, being like, nope, I'm done. I need to get out of this. So then again, they turn off the suction, they get you out of the bed. We talk about it. We see what you need for having that decompression time, being able to have that safe space afterwards, because you need to stay comfortable. Start off slow. You don't want to go all the way in the deep end in the beginning, because you need to know your limits. So if we're going to start off with spanking and bondage, let's start off slow first. Also go to munches so you can talk to other people. You can take classes on dominance and submission and bondage and the whole 9 yards that are within this particular world. And I highly encourage that. Please educate yourself. So more tips for the basics of BDSM. Again, American Sex with the BDSM expert, Sunny Megatron, to guide you through setting the scene, to be safe. Also, Kink University podcast has really good classes on that as well, at least like exploring that world, as well as certain things you need to be aware of, because there are things like safe, sane, consensual, RAC, which is risk aware kink, and there are a few other acronyms that you need to know what is safe, or you're pushing that threshold of safety, or if it is unsafe, like say you're doing edge play or, you know, trigger warning, cutting, piercing, things like that, or burning, branding, those are going to cause harm. You need to know what the care is afterwards for that. And being able to communicate that with a partner is extremely important. So ideally, if you're just like stepping your toe in, most people do start off with like restraints, blindfolds, things like that, props, paddles. That's usually the lighter end of the spectrum. Even just talking dirty or holding hands down during sex, that is part of power exchange play. Things that are more edgy, again, like I said, like knives, piercing, choking. Choking can be really dangerous, so you need to educate yourself on that and the types of positions that are good for that and more safe than others. And I could give a whole class on power exchange alone, so we're going to leave that for now, but it is fun to explore with a partner or partners in that particular instance. Outdoor sex. So big disclaimer, public sex is illegal in most places. Just so you know, if we're going with the whole risk aware, you can go to jail for public sex depending upon where you are. And the reason for that is it can be disturbing for some viewers if it's carried out in front of unsuspecting strangers. It's one thing if your audience knows what to expect. So the voyeurism and the exhibitionism, which exhibitionism is you like people to watch you having sexual encounters, and voyeurism is you like to watch others having sexual encounters. And it's what the experience is for you. But most often, if you're doing outdoor sex, they're not aware that this is about to happen and go down. And it's unfair to subject someone to a sexual situation in a public place that they did not consent to. Because remember, consent is sexy. If you want to have public sex, again, try it at your own risk and away from strangers' eyes. And keep in mind that you could get arrested. So that's part of being aware. With all that being said, there's nothing wrong with being turned on by the idea of being in the outdoors. You could even combine certain things like we've talked about before. You can have, you know, group sex or power exchange in the outdoors. And it's easy to see why it's such a common desire, because it's a huge thrill. It's that novelty as well as, oh, we may or may not get caught type deal that enhances that particular action. So if you're wanting to experience this without the risk of getting arrested, consider taking like a sexy camping trip with your partner or partners away, like out in the boonies, where it limits that interaction of other people. There are other places such as sex clubs or resorts that offer that. So I remember there are certain clubs in Atlanta that would have like an outdoor play space, even though there were walls up so people couldn't see in. As well as here in Florida, where I'm from, there's a resort called Caliente, where you can be outside having sex, things like that. Just be aware of where you are and the individuals that may be around you. Also, sensual encounters and role playing. So many femme-minded people fantasize. Also, masc and androgynous people do fantasize as well, but this is based off of research. And they're more likely to consider the emotional backstory of the encounter. Like, how did we get there? This often involves the vision of being pursued or desired by a partner before the actual sex takes place. In general, more femme-minded individuals are more inclined to like arrange and set up the stage and draw in their emotional, intellectual sensuality before attempting a scene where they lose control or become an object of someone else's desire. There are plenty of books and things on the internet about having sexual encounters and role playing, and just kind of see what comes to mind for you. Some of the more common ones that I have read or I have heard about. A big one that's coming up now, of course, is fantasy role play, where you may be doing like high fantasy, princess, prince, you meet, let's say, a goblin on the side of the road and you find it sexy and we're going to go do that. Or sometimes in tabletop, we can explore those encounters as well. By why I say tabletop, it's role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. You're already role-playing, we just throw in a sexy and romantic element into it. So again, it's that container that we can explore that way. Being like a sexualized animal, such as a puppy or a kitty, squirrel, chipmunk, fox, those are common ones. There's also a whole niche of furries that have a persona where they are this particular identity and they can engage in sexual encounters with other furries or people who do not identify as furries. So that is one of them, as well as maybe you have a whole encounter of maybe you want to be a secretary, where you have a person who's a higher, again, you're still engaging in that power exchange, who is a higher business person or a boss that is going to use you for sexual favors as you are doing, you know, their whole business work. Or another popular one is, you know, teacher student. You have alien encounters where they have, maybe you want the feeling of having eggs laid in you, things like that. And those are fun to talk about and explore. They may turn you on, they may not work for you. It all depends. But you really want to have this open, honest communication from the get-go about these. So I haven't used up all of my time. Oh, one more slide. So the benefits of this with exploring it with a partner or partners is you get to explore and sharing sexual fantasies, your love mapping, which is a big thing with Gottman, who is one of the sound relationship house theory. That's the one that I use when I do my relationship counseling. To promote things like sexual exploration or sexploration with romantic partner or partners, you must work together to create and maintain a supportive and safe relationship in order to provide a secure platform for this to happen. The availability, which entails reliability, being present, and able to provide support when necessary. Non-interference, which entails providing freedom to engage and explore one's environment without constraints. And encouragement, which entails conveying excitement and enthusiasm of one's own goals, of pursuits and challenges. Sexploration could potentially lead to positive outcomes with a romantic partner or partners, including such as sexual fantasies, trying new sexual behaviors. So that's that novelty. If we're going on whereas Gottman's more of a secure base. With relationships, there are other particular theories of sex and sexuality with relationship that they need novelty. And you can combine those two. And that can help have a fulfilling sexual or intimacy with one another. It's going to improve sexual communication. Again, we want to normalize this with our partners and partners. Sexuality and physical touch isn't something to be ashamed of or to be feared. And feeling safe with that person is going to allow you to have more of that communication with each other. And it's really positive. So getting back to the attachment, secure relationship enables individuals to more positively explore their own sexual identities. Attachment security has been linked to greater self-acceptance and positive attitudes towards one's own sexual identity, including being a part of the LGBTQ plus communities or queer communities. A secure attachment style is associated with disclosure of sexual orientations to others, which has been linked to a better mental being overall. Individuals who can more effectively draw on their secure base during identity exploration and receive the resulting support may be more likely to experience these positive outcomes. So serving as a secure base for someone or multiple individuals may also be linked to sexual communal strength, which is defined by being as responsive to and motivated to fulfill a partner's sexual needs. Researchers suggest that one's own sexual exploration or satisfaction is enhanced to the degree that they serve as a sexually secure base for a partner or partners' sexual exploration, which is linked with greater sexual and relationship satisfaction for all of the individuals that are involved. Whew, so that was a mouthful, and I have talked for quite a long time. So if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat, and I'm happy to answer them. Because I went over a lot of things. Oh, some things that I may have left out with books, which they're right here. These are books that I tell my clients to get. Number one is Come As You Are. There is also a workbook that goes along with it. So you can either do this alone or you can explore it with a partner or partners for your sexuality template and understanding your sexual desires and that dual model of brakes and accelerator. The assessment for your sexuality as far as having inhibitors and exciters, which are the brakes and the accelerator, that is in this. You can also find it online. It's pretty readily available and it's really short. It's only 10 questions. Another one is Hot and Unbothered, to how to think about, talk about, and have the sex you really want. And it's by Yana Talon Hicks. It's really good to be able to have that conversation that I was talking about. Like, first we have this talk. This book will help you be able to have that talk with somebody. So if you're looking to contact me, my email is always open. It's at therapistnikki@harmonyusinc.com. The website is harmonyusinc.com. We do have a Twitch channel, which is more of the streaming. I used to do the dating simulators and talk about how you date and explore sexuality with what's going on in the video games. We also had a podcast called The Movies That Traumatized Us, which we did discuss a lot about sex and sexuality in there, but it was more of in conjunction with 70s, 80s, and 90s movies. I also have a YouTube channel, which you will find those podcasts and other things. Just look up Therapist Nikki, and you'll find me there. And if there aren't any questions, I appreciate everyone's time in having this class. And thank you, Pineapple Support, for having me for this workshop.